Obsession will run you into the ground. It's not sustainable. Take it from me. You should try to avoid it at all costs. Be determined instead. I spent an entire year obsessing about uni, my grades, career, life after graduation, all of it. It started as a passion. Like most of us, we're willing to sacrifice certain things for it. Staying up and studying and doing homework just seemed necessary. I needed good grades after all. I was trying to go to space, work for NASA, develop rockets, all of that stuff. But how do you stop the obsession? Ambition is good, but you have to be careful. Just ask Andrew. In Whiplash, directed by Damien Chazelle, Andrew's an aspiring drummer at Schaefer College. He spends all of his time practicing, which is normal. He is a drummer at a music school. What else is he supposed to do? It's how the movie starts, until he's interrupted by the school's most famous band director, Terrence Fletcher. He was harsh, cold, and just mean, honestly. But Andrew was determined to improve, so he used it as motivation. But remember, determination does not equal obsession, and we'll get to that in a minute. Eventually, Fletcher gives Andrew a chance in his band, but it didn't go too smoothly. This is where the obsession began. I get it though. I'm sure you do too. There's always going to be setbacks in our progress. I mean, I wasn't a genius by any means, and I'd burn out really quickly. It's not easy. The struggle is normal. But our mistakes here were how we responded. We became obsessed. Andrew amped up his practice exponentially. His emotions became volatile, and he cut people out of his life just to chase his goals. He started practicing even more and more, and he would play until his hands became bloody. Yeah, don't do that. But he did. He saw it as part of the process. To be great is a sacrifice, right? Even though his goals do seem a little unrealistic, they're still close enough for him to fight for it. Here, just imagine the goals in your life. Maybe it's to start a family, become rich, famous, whatever it is. It's probably not impossible, right? Sure, getting rich is a little unrealistic, but it's possible, isn't it? This combination makes the conditions just right for obsession. Andrew has to fight as hard as possible just to keep his spot in the band and continuously work towards the goal. And the person to fuel his obsession is Terrence Fletcher. He's abusive. There's no other way to put it. Throwing a chair at Andrew on his first day, slapping him, making other students cry, and I mean, the list goes on forever. The standard is set ridiculously high. It's so far from where everyone is, especially for Andrew, since he holds a high expectation for him. But the bar isn't unreachable. It's just close enough to seem possible. This is the primary reason why Andrew became obsessed. He's chasing his goals, yes, but he's also chasing approval. It's a tricky thing. Approval, it's imaginary, superficial, it's meaningless. We all want it for sure, but we shouldn't. What is approval supposed to do for us? It's a shortcut to confidence, but it wanes twice as fast. But like I said, we all want approval for some reason. In this case, he needed approval from Fletcher, the person who seems to have the keys to success. Everyone has a Fletcher in their lives. If it turned out that his character was imaginary, it would make total sense, because for me, I was my own Fletcher. When chasing that goal of NASA and space stuff, I never felt like I was making enough progress fast enough. The goals seemed attainable, but still really far. I was a sophomore in college. There was still a ton of work to be done. The only way seemed to be obsessive, doing math until I couldn't do it anymore, no sleep. I was hard on myself. Of course, sometimes you have to be, but you also have to be understanding of yourself. You will fail. I always believe that any goal worth working for can be successful, but it just might be harder than you thought. And that's okay. I kept studying, I kept trying, but I let it take over. And for what? Even after all the things Andrew went through, his ending is still ambiguous. Obsession does not guarantee success. It only guarantees sacrifice. His relationship with his father deteriorated throughout the film, which was a direct correlation to how committed he was to drumming. When he took a brief break from music, his father reappeared in the story in a way different light. He also had a rocky relationship with the rest of his family, but it seemed mutual, honestly. His parents were only proud of his siblings who didn't pursue music. He even met a girl at the movie theater. She seemed kind and supportive. He was nervous to talk to her for what seemed like a while, but eventually they started going out. And this is usually the time people start to navigate serious relationships, I think. Early 20s sounds about right, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, it was going well until he poured all of his time into drumming. trying to prove Fletcher wrong and rise to his potential. He gave up all his meaningful relationships for this one thing. My story ends the exact same. I ended up passing all my classes, but I wish I focused more on the social aspect of my life at that time. It's already harder to sustain relationships in college, but I made it so much more difficult for myself. I was always in my dorm, working on homework or trying to get ahead for the next week. No matter how much free time I managed to muster, I always used it to sleep or just chill because I was so burnt out from overworking myself. I technically made a few friends at that time, but I couldn't sustain them. It's fine, but my obsession with my work didn't allow me to branch out socially. That's alright though. I think the solution is simple. Don't seek validation, even if it's from yourself. We all need to hear that, especially me. You would be lying to yourself if you feel like you never needed it. And if you really didn't, then congratulations. But how do you fix it? Well, I'm not too sure, but what helps me is to simply be proud of what I've done and to make smaller goals for the future. For example, if I wanted to become a pianist, I would make really small goals that ended up to the end game. The first step would be to get access to a piano and to find something real easy to play, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, there might always be a Fletcher in your life. It can be an effective source of motivation, but most likely it'll just drive you crazy. But don't take this advice and run with it. I wouldn't even call it advice, honestly. I'm just speaking for what I think would work. I don't have most of my own life figured out yet, but it's very interesting to look inwards and project once in a while, you know? So is obsession worth it? No, it's not. It'll cost you your health, relationships, and even your life. The director Damien Chazelle believes that Andrew would end up passing by the age of 30. That type of pressure is not sustainable. Even the director who wrote the story with an ambiguous ending knew Andrew wouldn't last that long. If that's not a warning, I don't know what is.